I woke up to the harsh sting of disinfectant burning my nose, and the steady hum of machines beeping in rhythm with my heartbeat. The room felt too bright, too white, too clean for a man who had just crawled out of fire. My skin was tight where the burns wrapped around my arms, and every breath made my ribs ache as if they were trying to remember how to hold me together. I stared at the ceiling for a long moment, trying to understand where I was, why everything hurt, and whether the explosion had been a nightmare or a memory. But then the smell of smoke drifted through my mind, the sound of metal ripping apart, the violent flash of orange and heat swallowing everything around me. My truck, my old, faithful truck, had blown apart beneath me. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. That word sounded strange in my ears. I shifted slightly, wincing, and that's when I heard footsteps. Fast ones, too light to be a doctor and too hurried to be a nurse. Then came voices low at first, muffled through the thin hospital walls, but growing clearer with each step. My son's voice. I froze. Even through the haze of pain, I'd know that voice anywhere. He sounded anxious, but not the kind of anxious you hear when someone is worried about a loved one. No, this was different. Sharper. Excited. "Dad's truck exploded," he said, almost breathless. "Finally, we can sell his house." My chest hollowed out instantly, as if every organ inside me had just collapsed into dust. His wife let out a small gasp, not of grief, but disbelief. "So he's really gone?" she whispered, and I felt my throat tighten until I could barely breathe. My son let out a short laugh, the kind people make when they think life has just solved a problem for them. "No one survives that kind of blast," he said. "I mean, look at the video the neighbors sent. There's nothing left. Nothing left." I gripped the bedrail with trembling fingers as their voices floated in from the hallway. He didn't ask if I was alive. He didn't ask about my injuries. He didn't even ask which room I was in. All he wanted to know was how quickly he could get his hands on the property. He started listing things he wanted to change about my home, tear out the old floors, sell the tools in my shed, knock down the wall between the kitchen and the dining room. His wife chimed in, saying they could use the money to finally upgrade their lifestyle. I listened to all of it with my jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth would crack out my house. My life, my memories. To them, it was nothing more than real estate waiting to be cashed in. And the worst part? They were happy about it, celebrating, as if the man who raised him, fed him, carried him on his shoulders for years, worked overtime to buy groceries, and stayed awake through his fevers, had never existed at all. The nurse walked in and saw something shift in my face. She set the morning chart down gently and handed me a thick, heavy envelope that had been delivered earlier. "The investigator left this for you," she said softly. I tore it open with shaky fingers. Inside was a formal letter from the truck manufacturer. Apologies, explanations, a settlement offer that made my eyes widen. $14 million. Not a penny less. They were terrified. They knew what happened wasn't my fault. They were buying my silence. $14 million to forget the explosion. $14 million because I survived. I stared at the number for a long time, long enough that the nurse asked if I needed water. I didn't answer. My mind was somewhere else back in the hallway, replaying my son's words over and over until the syllables became knives. Finally, "We can sell his house." They thought my life was over. They wanted it to be over. He didn't come here to mourn. He came here to confirm the prize. And the moment he felt sure I was gone, he went straight to planning how to empty my home. I felt something inside me shift, not anger exactly, not sadness, but a slow, heavy clarity. A lifetime of giving, forgiving, and hoping had turned into this moment, where my own son was relieved to see me buried under flames. I took a long breath and let it out, steadying my voice before speaking to the nurse. She asked gently if she should tell my son I was awake. For a moment, I imagined the look on his face, the shock, the stutter, the scramble to explain himself. But then I looked back at the settlement letter in my hand, felt the weight of it, the meaning of it. "No," I whispered. "Not yet. Tomorrow would come. And tomorrow, my son would learn what it truly meant to count a man out before his time. Especially a man who had just been handed a $14 million second chance. Morning came slowly in that hospital room, crawling in through the slats of the blinds like it was afraid to wake me. I barely slept. Not because of the pain or the machines or the burns that made every breath feel like fire, but because of my son's voice echoing in my head all night. Every word replayed, each one cutting deeper than the last. I didn't think a human heart could bruise from the inside, but mine felt like it had. The doctors said the explosion should have killed me. I guess in a way, part of me did die, just not the part they expected. A nurse came in with breakfast oatmeal, lukewarm coffee, and a sympathetic smile. "Your family didn't return today," she said gently, as if saying it too loudly would hurt. I almost laughed. Family. The same son who walked through the hospital yesterday, not to check on me, but to confirm if my death was official. The same son who talked about selling my house while I was lying one hallway away, fighting for breath. I asked the nurse to close the door. I needed quiet. Not silence quiet. The kind where you can hear your own thoughts without someone else's noise drowning them out. When she left, I took out the settlement folder again. The papers felt heavier this morning. $14 million. More money than I ever imagined touching in a lifetime full of overtime shifts, old boots, sore backs, and eating the cheaper brand of cereal just to stretch every paycheck. I wasn't a rich man. Never had been. I lived simply, worked honestly, and believed that if you raised your child with love, they'd return at least a fraction of it when you needed them most. But life doesn't bend to beliefs. Life reveals truth. As I sat there quietly, another voice drifted in from the hallway. My heart sank instantly. It was my son again, but this time he wasn't laughing. He sounded irritated, impatient. "What do you mean there's no update?" He snapped at a nurse. "Someone must have told you something. Didn't the paramedics bring in a burned body from the explosion?" He paused, then lowered his voice, but not enough. "Look, we just need to know if it's him. If he's gone." I braced myself, gripping the bed rail. Not once did he ask if I might still be alive. Not once did he say he hoped I was safe. His wife chimed in, her voice dripping with annoyance. "We need closure," she said. "We can't start fixing the house until we know for sure. There's a lot of money tied up in that property." Closure, money, property. Not a single word about me. I pressed the call button and asked the nurse to leave my food. When she left the tray, she gave me a look, not pity, but something softer. Maybe she had overheard them. Maybe she understood. Some people don't need explanations to recognize pain. I waited until my son's footsteps faded before I reached for my phone. I hadn't turned it on since before the explosion. When the screen lit up, dozens of messages appeared, none from him. Most were from old co-workers who heard about the accident, praying I was okay. Men who barely knew my birthday but cared more about my life than my own flesh and blood. I felt a stinging behind my eyes and rubbed my forehead slowly, letting the weight of everything settle. The investigators arrived in the afternoon, 3 suited men with tight expressions and a briefcase. They walked in with the careful politeness people use when they know they're about to talk to someone who survived what should have been a fatal accident. One of them placed the briefcase on my bedside table and opened it, revealing a stack of documents, financial evaluations, repair costs, liability assessments. I didn't need an explanation. I understood immediately. They were going to settle quickly, quietly, generously. Too generously. $14 million was the opening offer. They were terrified of a lawsuit, but I wasn't thinking about lawsuits. I was thinking about my son and how fast he tried to bury me when he thought. The ground was still warm. One of the representatives cleared his throat. "Sir, you will receive full medical coverage, immediate payout upon signature, and transport to any rehabilitation center of your choosing." I nodded, barely listening. My mind was somewhere else. Somewhere more broken, more fragile, more painful. When they left the room, I sat there staring at my hands. They were trembling old hands, burned hands, but still my hands. These hands held my boy when he was small enough to fit against my chest. These hands carried him when he scraped his knees. These hands built the crib he slept in. And now? He treated me like a dead man whose only worth was the property he'd leave behind. I inhaled slowly, feeling something unfamiliar rise inside me. Not rage, not revenge. Something colder. Something steadier. Resolve. When night fell, a soft rain began tapping the window light, rhythmic, almost comforting. I reached for the settlement sheet again and read it slowly, line by line. $14 million. Enough to change a life. Enough to change my ending, but not his. Not anymore. I folded the document neatly and placed it under my pillow like it was something sacred. Then I pressed the nurse button one more time. When she came in, I looked her in the eyes and said, "Please do not allow any visitors for me." No one, not even my son. She hesitated, then nodded. I wasn't angry. I wasn't plotting. I wasn't spiteful. I was done. Tomorrow, my son would come back expecting confirmation of my death. Expecting the signature. Expecting access to a house he thought was already his. But what he would get instead was a truth he never prepared for. I wasn't gone. And I wasn't giving him a single piece of the life he tried to bury. I didn't sleep that night. The hospital lights dimmed after midnight, but they never truly go dark. Not even for a man trying to piece himself back together after watching his own son celebrate his death. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to the soft hum of the machines, the distant roll of a cleaning cart, the occasional muted cough from another room. The world felt like it was slowing down around me, but inside, everything was racing. My thoughts ran circles, looping back to one image over and over. My son smiling at the idea of my house being empty. I knew him once. Knew the boy who used to cling to my pants when thunder scared him. Knew the boy who whispered, "Dad, don't leave," when I tucked him into bed. Knew the boy who used to sit in my truck's passenger seat, his feet not even reaching the floor, humming off key to the radio. But that boy was gone. And the man he became was unrecognizable. The sun eventually rose, painting a gentle orange glow across the walls. A soft knock came at my door. The nurse walked in with the day shift chart and said, "Your son called the front desk. He's coming soon." She looked at me carefully, as if trying to read my reaction. She didn't know whether I'd be relieved or afraid. All I felt was empty. I asked her calmly, "Please remember what I told you. No visitors." She nodded and walked out. An hour passed before I heard the familiar footsteps, the heavy, confident steps of someone who believes everything belongs to him the moment he wants it. He didn't know yet that the nurses had strict orders not to let him in. I heard him speak to the receptionist first, his voice sharp. "I need to see my father's chart. We're trying to settle the house situation. There must be paperwork for next of kin." My stomach twisted. He was already talking like I was in the ground. The nurse responded politely. "Sir, patient information is private," he cut her off. "You don't understand. My father's truck exploded. He can't be alive. So why is there no death certificate?" There was a pause. A long one. I imagined the nurse looking him straight in the eye before saying gently, "Because your father is not deceased." Silence. A heavy, stunned, suffocating silence. Then, "What do you mean he's not deceased? Are you sure? Did you mix up patients? Are you telling me he's alive? That can't be. There was nothing left of that truck." He sounded angry. Not relieved. Not grateful. Angry. As if my survival was an inconvenience. I closed my eyes, listening to him pacing in the hallway. His wife's voice joined him, shaky, anxious. If he's alive, then the house, does that mean we can't? Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like a bad smell. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about losing access to something that had never been hers. Then came a knock on my door, gentler than before. The nurse opened it slightly, whispering, "He's demanding to speak with you." Should I tell him to leave? I stared at the wall for a moment, letting the weight of everything press into my chest. The anger, the betrayal, the quiet understanding that he didn't love me, only what he thought I'd leave behind. I nodded firmly. "Tell him I'm not receiving visitors." She closed the door and walked away. A few seconds later, my son's voice exploded in the hallway. "What do you mean he won't see me? He's my father. I have a right to see him." He slammed his palm against the wall, and I heard the building shake slightly. Does he even know I'm here? Does he know what we've gone through? Gone through. Gone through. He celebrated my death. He planned how to spend my things. He was the one who left me for dead. And now he wanted to pretend this was about family. The nurses spoke to him firmly. "Sir, the patient has declined visits. We cannot force him." He tried again. Dad, can you hear me? It's me. Just let me talk to you." His voice was desperate. But it wasn't the desperation of a man who feared losing his father. It was the desperation of a man losing control of a prize he already counted, as his wife tugged on his sleeve. "Let's just go," she whispered. "We need to figure out the house paperwork. Maybe the insurance. Always money. Never love." They left moments later, their footsteps hurried and frustrated, disappearing down the hallway. Once they were gone, I finally exhaled. My chest felt tight, as if my ribs were made of rope pulling inward. I reached under my pillow and pulled out the settlement agreement again. $14 million. The company's representative was coming back in the morning with final paperwork. As I traced my finger over the number, a strange calmness washed over me. For the first time in years, I felt in control of my own fate. Not as a father, not as a burden, but as a man who had survived what should have ended him. And that's when it hit me. My son didn't deserve a single piece of the life I built. Not after trying to erase me the moment he thought it was convenient. I folded the papers neatly and whispered to myself, Tomorrow he'll know exactly what he lost. Not my house. Not my money. Not my possessions. He'll know he lost me. And this time, it wouldn't be an accident. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, casting long stripes across the hospital floor. I sat on the edge of the bed, steady, calm, feeling the aches of my body, but the clarity of my mind sharper than ever. The company representative had arrived early, briefcase in hand, ready to finalize the $14 million settlement. I signed the papers carefully, each stroke deliberate, savoring the quiet weight of justice and survival. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about acknowledgement. A lifetime of sacrifice, endurance, and quiet patience finally being recognized, even if the people I loved most had never cared to notice. The nurse whispered that my son was downstairs, demanding to see me. I didn't react at first, letting the words settle like a stone in the pit of my stomach. When he finally appeared in the doorway, his confident strut faltered. He wasn't expecting me upright. He wasn't expecting life in my eyes, strength in my hands, a calm certainty in my voice. His face paled, his jaw tightened, and he glanced at the bandages covering my arms as if confirming I wasn't a ghost. Dad, I thought. He stammered. But I didn't let him finish. You celebrated my death, I said quietly. You spoke about selling my house, taking my belongings, planning your life as though I was gone. You didn't check if I survived. You didn't care. And now, after all of that, you stand here pretending concern? His mouth opened, closed, and opened again, but no words came out. The realization hit him faster than any lecture or punishment I could have given. He had been wrong about me, wrong about everything. And powerless to undo it, I rose slowly, leaning on my cane, letting him see that I was whole enough to stand. The house, the truck, the property, they were never yours, I said firmly. And now, after trying to erase me from your world, you get to watch me walk away with everything I earned, everything I survived for, and everything you never deserved. He tried to protest, stammer, argue, but his voice sounded weak even to his own ears. Not because I had shouted, but because the truth had already silenced him. I opened the envelope from the company and laid it on the table. $14 million. Not a single cent would go to him or his wife. I turned back toward the window, sunlight warming my face, feeling the cool calm of justice settling into my bones. I didn't need to yell, didn't need to scream. This was quiet, unshakable, undeniable. I was alive. I had survived. And I had survived them. My son slumped into a chair, exhausted, shaken, realizing that his arrogance, greed, and cruelty had been met not with anger, but with quiet, unmovable strength. His wife whispered, We didn't know. But there was no excuse that could erase the truth. The truth was that I had endured. The truth was that I had outlived their hatred and walked away victorious. With patience, cunning, and dignity intact, I grabbed a small suitcase and began packing only what mattered. Old photographs, letters, and a few keepsakes from decades of work and love. Not for them. Not for the money. For me. My son and his wife hovered near the door, speechless, watching as the life they hoped to inherit without effort slipped from their hands. For the first time, they understood what it meant to celebrate someone's supposed death and to see that person rise above every expectation, every insult, and every betrayal. I stopped at the doorway, looking back once more. Remember this, I said quietly, my voice carrying more weight than any argument. Sometimes losing everything is the only way people learn what they never had. And with that, I stepped outside, the morning sun spilling over my shoulders. Suitcase in hand, ready to start a life untouched by greed, hatred, or false family ties. For the first time in years, I felt free. For the first time in years, I felt alive. And they would never forget the lesson they learned too late.